Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. We are going to have a great conversation today on how to be alive again in your marriage. The 5 steps to stop obsessing about getting a divorce and find passion again in your life. So, who is this webinar for? This program is specifically designed for professional women who are married to nice guys or nice gals and feel like their partner is more of a roommate than a soulmate. So, we're going to talk a little bit later about what I mean by soulmate. And full disclaimer, I'm going to be using the term husband, partner, lover to mean whomever your intimate partnership is with. Whether you are heterosexual or in a same sex relationship, it doesn't matter. If you are a woman who wants to stay coupled but have tried everything and nothing has worked, and you probably then feel pretty tired and like you just don't know what else to do, this webinar is for you. So you are in the right place. In the next 45 minutes, we're going to look at how to turn your marriage that looks amazing on paper into a marriage that you want to be in. So I have been working with couples for a very, very long time, and most of them come to me and say, everybody thinks that we have the perfect relationship. We're going to talk about how to start investing your very valuable energy in things that you can actually change and stop wasting your time on things that don't work. We're going to have this conversation about how to actually move from a roommate to a soulmate relationship, even if that sounds totally impossible, and how to start being in charge of the experience that you're having in your marriage without telling your partner how to change or what to do differently. And you've probably had that conversation a lot of times before now anyway. We're going to look at how to get off the mental hamster wheel of thinking, should I stay? Should I go? Should I get a divorce? Did I choose the right person? And that place can be maddening and crazy making. And we're going to show you how to do all of this without spending years in weekly therapy or reading any more self-help books. And if you are like so many people, you probably have a stack of them on your nightstand right now. So here's my promise to you. I'm going to give you a step-by-step process to start feeling alive again in your marriage and stop worrying about divorce. And since this is my house, we get my rules, okay? First of all, this is not magic. This is not unicorns and ponies here. This program requires that you roll up your sleeves and get dirty. Real transformation only comes with real work, and this is big girl work here. This program is not for you if you really hate your partner. If he's mean or if she's abusive or if he has done something that you deem unforgivable, this program is probably not for you. We are not here to convince you to stay married. I'm not trying to keep people married. This is not a religious program at all. I don't have a religious bent at all. But if you want to stay together and if you want to know that you have tried everything in your power to make it work, we can show you how to feel more alive, more joy, and even open your relationship to passion. But it's not about trying to convince you to stay. My clients are the 5%. They are special. And that means these are people who are ready to be more committed to the solution than to the problem. But before we get to all of the good stuff, I want to check in with you and see where you're at and make sure that this sounds like you. So I'm wondering if you find yourself talking to your girlfriends about how bored and disconnected you are in your marriage. Are you one of those women that goes to the wine bar on Friday night for a mom's night out and you find yourself rolling your eyes about what your husband did this week and feeling like he's like having a third child in the house? Do you follow old flames or former lovers on social media and you wonder what if? Do you find yourself lingering on a past boyfriend's Facebook profile just a little too long, checking out what he's doing in his life and imagining if you were there in it with him? Are you afraid that if you get a divorce, it will destroy your children and all that you've worked for over these last many years? So finally, your kids are in the right schools and you're in the perfect house and you have the right jobs and the good neighborhood and everything's really set up exactly how it's supposed to be. This is how you wanted your life to be. And if you are the one who initiates a divorce, you're going to feel terrible and like you're trying to put your happiness before what's really best for your kids, or at least what you tell yourself might be best for your kids. Do you daydream about being in a marriage with amazing desire and connection that just comes naturally, and chemistry that just comes out of you spontaneously? Do you find that you're having the exact same fight over and over and over again with your husband about sex or about money? Those are the two big things that I tend to hear, but certainly sex, and having those arguments over and over until 1 o'clock in the morning and not getting anywhere with them. Do you sometimes find yourself being just a little too flirty with a coworker, maybe your kid's soccer coach? Maybe you find yourself going to that early 5 a.m. spin class with the hunky trainer just so that you have a little bit of time to feel that flirtatious energy or that zing again. You might even fantasize about actually having an affair, or maybe you've already had one. Do you ever wonder, is this really all there is for me? That you've worked all these years, you've gone to the right schools, you have the good job, you've read all the good parenting books, and this is all there is. Well, here's the good news, that none of these things are the real problem. The real problem is that you haven't made the shifts yet. And once you make them, well, things start changing. So the real problem is that you haven't made these shifts. And when you do make them, you will stop feeling like you are living and sleeping with a roommate and experience the richness of a soulmate relationship. And when I say a soulmate relationship, what I mean is not someone where everything is magically perfect, but someone who helps to show you where your work lies. Someone who helps to grow and stretch and support you in developing in the ways that you need to develop in intimate relationships. You're going to be able to find and see experiences every day in your relationship that will bring you joy and connection and even, shockingly, passion again. You're going to be a powerful role model for healthy, committed, and engaged relationships for your children and the young people in your life. And so many people who I work with are very concerned about how their children are going to grow up and learn to have healthy relationships when they don't even know how to do this with their own partner. And so even if you're not screaming and yelling with your husband at home, your kids feel it when there's conflict. They see it when you're not warm and snuggly and compassionate and empathetic towards each other. And this absolutely impacts them. You will start celebrating the wonderful marriage and life that you have instead of logging hours with your girlfriends, complaining about what you wish you had. And the best part, you will be able to have the quivery feeling again in your belly, that feeling of anticipation and excitement and longing that tells you that you are alive and that you want to show up in this relationship. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But before we go too much further, I'd like to take just a second to introduce myself and who I am and why the hell you should even listen to me. My name is Jenny Glick. I'm a relationship mentor. I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 10 years. I'm an ASECT certified sex therapist and have over 20 years experience working with individuals, couples, to help get their relationships back on track. But most importantly for you, I get it. I'm 20 years with my husband, 18 years married. We have a 16-year-old son. And everything that I'm about to teach you and show you, I have done myself. I have walked this path, and now I'm here to show you the way. So I've been doing this work for a very long time, and over all these years, I've realized that there's a huge difference between individuals and couples who made real change in therapy and those who did not. And what I saw was those clients who implemented the 5 shifts were the ones who repeatedly got results. And so we're going to look at those shifts right now. There are 5 key shifts that you have to make if you want to change your marriage. From this roommate, we feel like, I've even had people say, I feel like I live with my brother, to a soulmate. So a connection that feels deeper, that feels more rich and more rewarding. Number 1 is live with radical accountability. Radical accountability is at the heart of everything we do here. And when you have radical accountability, you have radical power. The only things that you have control over is your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions. And by taking radical accountability, you take on power. You get to be the CEO of your life, the leader of your destiny, and you are no longer victim to your circumstances. This program is not about blaming your partner. It's about doing your own change and taking your own accountability and doing your own work. Because if blaming your partner was going to work, it would have worked by now. You'll hear me say that a lot. Many of the experts and therapists in my very own field say things like marriage is a 50-50 proposition, and it isn't. Marriage is about each party taking 100% accountability, and that 100% accountability has to start with you. Without radical change, we don't get anything that will be radically different. If we continue down the path of status quo, then we're going to keep getting status quo. Number 2, working on your marriage doesn't work. I know it's crazy to say, isn't it? But think about it. If people wanted to change, they wouldn't go to couples counseling, right? They would just change. Because the things that you want your partner to change, you have probably told him over and over and over again, right? And those things have not created any change. And when you have the same argument over and over again, there's so much scar tissue that's built up that you dig in with each other. And you're in it and you want to fight, right? Because you keep going through that same pattern, and this time you do not want to lose the battle. And in this stuck place, it can feel impossible because you feel like you're giving in and you're losing the battle. And so many people who come into my office say things like, well, we're both really stubborn. And I think if we were to use your stubbornness in the service of making real change, instead of using your stubbornness to keep you in this battle, we actually could get somewhere new. But unfortunately, we don't. Couples therapy can be like moving furniture around a house that's on fire. And so sure, maybe I'm annoyed because my husband has piles in the house, and those piles in the house feel so frustrating to me that then I don't want to have sex with him because I feel like he's not doing his part, and so I'm not feeling romantic and like I want to do I want to do him, right? And so we're in this deadlock. And I can go to my couples therapist and take my husband with us, and we can negotiate that he needs to do some of the piles And then maybe I agree to have sex more frequently. But all we're doing is moving the furniture around this house that's on fire, because the parts of the relationship that are actually broken and aren't being addressed are the parts that I'm not willing to look at. And when we have this divide between us, right, and I feel annoyed about the piles and he feels annoyed because we're not having sex, it's so easy to start slipping into a relationship with somebody else. So that old boyfriend on Facebook, or your kid's soccer coach who you stay after practice and linger with just a little too long because it seems like that person really gets you. So number 2, we need to start using the secret weapon. And the secret weapon is your marriage is your ashram. And that means your partner is your guru. And here's what I mean by that. Lots of people want to move to India, right, to find their guru, to go to that holy place where they can meditate all day and learn about themselves and find their spiritual path. But we actually don't need to go to India to find a guru to become enlightened. We can just get married or move in together and have a kid. Because when you do, what happens is the things that you need to work on to develop as a human and to evolve to your next level are right in front of you. That means you can stop bristling against all the annoying things that your partner does and start looking at what the real problem is. And when you can see the real problem, the solutions begin to become obvious. So the old way of doing this was to blame your partner and say he's the problem, he needs to pick up his piles, and I need to change him. And when he changes, then I'll be happy. And if he would just see what he's doing that's so annoying for me, and if he would just change that, then things would get better, right? It seems super simple. So we would go to couples counseling, and I would tell the therapist about all the things that he's doing that are hurtful and frustrating and that annoy me. And then my partner will tell the therapist all the things that I do that are hurtful and frustrating and annoying. And then I try to convince the therapist that I'm right and that he's wrong. And then he tries to convince the therapist that he's right and I'm wrong. And then we both start defending ourselves. And maybe we make some resolution or compromise about how we're going to do things differently. And we decide that if we're going to invest in therapy, that maybe we'll do a little bit of change, and we might even take home some worksheets or something to try to get us back on track. But the change lasts for just a few weeks, and then we drop back to the status quo. Or maybe you don't even go to therapy at all, and you just argue about the lack of connection, the lack of spontaneous sex, and how, nothing really seems like it's changing. You maybe just blame it on the fact that you just don't know how to communicate, and you roll your eyes and you just settle into, I guess this is just how it's going to be. You might one day stop at Barnes & Noble and pick up one of those books on communication. It may be the 5 Love Languages book that you possibly have on your nightstand right now. And maybe you give it to your partner to read, but he never does. Or maybe he just reads the first chapter. But you never really implement anything from that book. And your husband just continues to wonder why you are so demanding and why you just can't be happy. And I'm going to show you why. Here's why it is that doesn't work. Because the real problem is not your husband, right? Do you remember when you were in middle school and you learned about icebergs? And the top of the iceberg is the 10% that you can see. And the bottom of the iceberg is the 90% that you can't see. And most couples therapy focuses on the 10% that you can see. So the furniture, right? The furniture in the house, but it's not focused on the plumbing and the electrical and the pieces that are holding that house together. And that's the 90%, like what it is that you're bringing into that relationship. There is a new way, and you don't even need to get your partner on board with this. With a few daily simple steps, you can replace all of that problem solving, not problem solving that you're doing right now. And how we do this is by creating a new powerful mindset, new beliefs, and that has to create a new relationship. So let's look at how your marriage is your ashram. When you see that your marriage is your ashram, you have immediate impact on your life because you are now in charge of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And when you shift, everything shifts. You are 100% in charge of you. No more trying to get him to change, which can be so maddening, like pushing a boulder up a hill, right? When you change yourself, the entire system changes too. Okay, this is really important. You and your partner create a system. And when one part of that system changes, the entire system starts to change. So let's talk about Karen. Karen is the client who I worked with. She's 43, married to Derek, 3 kids. They met in graduate school almost 20 years ago on the East Coast and then relocated. They have 3 kids under the age of 9, and they're not from this part of the country, and so they don't have any family support that's nearby. So really the parenting of the 3 kids is all on them. They both work full-time jobs. 2 of their kids have special health needs. One has very severe allergies, and the other one has some medical needs. And so their kids require special supports. They have more doctor's appointments than usual. The food preparation in their house is kind of crazy. Hard for them to take spontaneous or even planned vacation because of the special accommodations that they need with their kids. To say nothing of the stress that this puts on the both of them in terms of worrying about their children's future. Everyone in their world thinks that Karen and Derek are the perfect couple. He coaches the girls' basketball team. She's the PTA president. But Karen came into me and said, Derek feels like he's like having a 4th child. So, and I hear this a lot from women, that they feel like their husband is just like another child. And her complaints include things like he doesn't do the house projects the way that she would want them to be done, the holiday shopping the way that she would want it to be done. So then she ends up doing it on her own and feels resentful about him. As soon as she feels like he's a child, what I tend to see is sex life breaks down. So now she doesn't want to have sex because we're hardwired not to want to have sex with our kids, right? And if she mentally has him in this place of being a 4th child, that is completely going to overturn their sex life, and it does. And so their sex life is really in the toilet, which is terrible. So Karen had an individual therapist that she worked with for some years, and that therapist was a great therapist, really reputable. Karen liked her a lot, but it wasn't really helping her to move forward in their couples therapy, and her husband did not want to go see a couples therapist. So Karen came in to start working with me on her own. And she engaged in this work really actively. And one of the things that I did that was different than her individual therapist was to help her start taking control of her life and stop blaming Derek for where she was at. We started looking at how Karen supported her husband in being the 4th child in their marriage, and how she could see much more change when she started looking at herself rather than focusing on him. And so when she went to her individual therapist, she would usually vent about what Derek was doing for the hour, and she kind of felt better because she got to vent about it. But when she came and did the work with me, that process was very, very different. Karen later sent me an unsolicited email that said, "You're the first person who's been able to help us. I've been working my side of the street," so that's what I often call it, "and it has not been easy, but I'm seeing change in our marriage. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. I know it won't change overnight, but when I came to you, I just knew that divorce was the only way. And now I'm thrilled that there's a path to keep our family together." And so again, this isn't magic. She started doing her own work and things started to change. So let's do a quick recap. Number 1 in the 5-step process, radical accountability. Number 2, stop working on your marriage. And number 3, realize that your marriage is your ashram. And now let's look at how to use the things that used to trigger you in your marriage to catapult you to a new, more alive place in your relationship. And I call that using your triggers. So how are you going to use your triggers? Have you ever wondered why you are only triggered by your beloved? Like that person is the one who triggers you more than anyone? I bet no one in your life triggers you the way that he does, with the exception of maybe your mother, right? Or your father. So people closest to us tend to trigger us more than anyone else, right? Here's what we know about triggers. The places where you are triggered by your partner, they show up in you where your own developmental growth edges are. So those are the places where you need to do your own personal work. That's why you're triggered by them. One of the examples that I give to people a lot is if you feel like you're a really awesome mom, like you know you're a really good mom, if somebody were to say to you, you're a crappy mom, you probably wouldn't be triggered by that because you're like, no, I'm a great mom. I'm not perfect, but I know I'm really good, so it wouldn't bother you. But if you feel insecure, let's say, about cellulite on the back of your thighs, and if somebody were to mention to you that it looks like you're putting on some weight because they can tell, you might feel really self-conscious, right? That's a trigger because you have some emotional scar tissue there and there's some work for you that you need to do in those places. Let's look at a second case study, Holly. So Holly is 39 years old. She's been married to Kevin for 8 years. This is the second marriage for the both of them. They have one 5-year-old son, and Holly came to me with the primary complaint that Kevin wouldn't listen to her. So she felt really angry. By the time she came to me, she was downright pissed that she was sick and tired of him not listening to her, that he just wouldn't listen. And the secondary issue then was that she felt like there was no passion and no connection in their life together. So one of the things that we did with Holly was we looked at the repeated patterns of how she tended to choose men, she told me, who wouldn't listen to her. So her first husband, she said he didn't listen to her either. So we looked at that, right? So it's really easy to say, wow, why do I keep choosing alcoholics, right? And it's easy to say, well, next time I'm just going to choose someone who does listen or who doesn't drink. But instead, we got radically accountable. And we realized where it was that Holly made it hard for her partners to hear her because she would complain, she would rant, she would scream, and sometimes she would even name call and threaten to leave. And this was something that was really shocking for her to see, that this part of her would come out with her husband. And it certainly didn't come out with her best friends or any of her women friends. And she was a holistic healer in the community. And no one would have ever thought in a million years that she would have brought something negative to this relationship because her persona was so soft and flowy that you just wouldn't know that once we got to what was happening in kind of the electrical part of the house, the plumbing part of the house, she could see that she was bringing some energy that was not helping increase her husband's interest in wanting to listen to her. So Holly sent this to me. I seriously never realized how I was making it so hard for Kevin to listen to me. And the more I started to own my part, things started to change. It sounds so stupid as I'm writing this, but I literally never saw it before. And she didn't. And they were right on the precipice of getting a divorce. And one of the things that I said to her was that unless she worked on her own triggers, her own parts of the work, she had to recreate the system again. So sure, she would have a different husband. It wouldn't be Kevin anymore. It would be somebody different. But she would bring the same architecture to that structure if she didn't address it now. So here's how triggers work. So there's you and your partner. And when my partner does something, leaves his piles around the house or is late picking up the kid at school, I feel contempt. And that's sharp energy that gets between the two of us. And then maybe he doesn't do for my birthday what I would want for him to do for my birthday. And I feel resentment about that. And then we make travel arrangements and he forgets to book the hotel. And I continue to feel contempt and resentment. And then I start withholding affection and love to my partner. And all of that then prevents me from getting close to him and him getting close to me. And if I decide, or if I believe that if I were to leave this marriage, that I would magically also leave that contempt, resentment, and withholding, I'm wrong. Because what happens is I take all of it with me because it's mine. So the fifth shift is to invest in mentoring. A mentor is a guide. It's someone to show you the way to where you want to be. If you knew how to get there on your own, you would not be watching this video right now. Mentoring brings accountability, perspective, and direction so you can get the traction that you want to move to your destination, right? Accountability is key. If I work out with a personal trainer once a month, I am going to get very different results than if I work out with that trainer twice a week and then am also having contact in the days in between with that trainer to keep me motivated and invested in my goal. It might sound simple, but if it was easy, you would already be there. Most of us have a couple of places where we have a really hard time holding ourselves accountable. And when we haven't successfully been able to hold ourselves accountable with new behaviors in our relationship, what that means is I need someone to hold accountability with me. I want you to remember we were never meant to do this alone. Until the last 60, 70 years, most human beings lived in communities together and had way more support for how to do marriage, how to do commitment, how to raise children and families. We are more isolated and more alone now, and all the research shows it, than any other time in our life. So even though we seem connected because we're all on our phones all the time, we're not more connected. Group mentoring held with radical accountability provides a very rare forum where we get to celebrate your successes, hold a space for powerful personal growth, and have a program to lean into when you fall, because we all fall down. This work is tough, and so having a container to hold you is vital. So, with new mindset, we can add to that accountability, and new mindset plus radical accountability equals a new marriage. That's how it works. If we keep doing the old path where we don't use and implement the 5 shifts, we have the same mindset, there's no accountability, we have the same arguments over and over again, and we have no mentoring, we have to get the same marriage. We just stay in the status quo. Does that make sense? So when we just stay doing the same thing, we cannot expect to get a different result, period. So today I promised that I would talk about how to be in charge of the experience that you are having in your marriage without having to tell your husband or your partner to change. How to get off that mental hamster wheel of thinking, should I stay or should I go? Should I get a divorce? Did I marry the wrong person? How to turn your marriage that looks good on paper into a marriage that you want to be in, even if couples therapy hasn't worked in the past. How to start putting your valuable energy and time into actions that actually will help you get what you want, and stop wasting energy on what doesn't work. And again, If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. So what you need to have the marriage that you want, you need radical accountability. You need to stop working on your marriage. And I know that sounds crazy. You need to know that your marriage is your ashram, it's your school, and your partner is your teacher. There is much to be learned here. You need to start using your triggers and invest in quality mentoring. These 5 shifts alone are enough to launch you out of feeling stuck and frustrated and into feeling alive again in your life and in your marriage. And now, my friend, you have a choice. You can either take the information that I have given you and you can keep doing it the same way. You can keep having the same arguments over and over again. You can keep pretending like everything is totally fine and have one too many glasses of red wine with your girlfriends and go home and fall asleep early and blame it on drinking too much so you don't have to have the argument about sex with your husband again. You can keep dreaming about a different life and the what ifs. Or you can take the brave, bold, courageous step and step into a place of radical accountability. You can stop working on your marriage and you can start working on yourself. My team and I have set aside time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas to your marriage today, like right now. Whatever your biggest challenges are, we have seen it and we know how to help you overcome it. Here's how I can help. On this phone call, we will work with you to craft a step-by-step plan to help identify exactly what you need to do to stop thinking about divorce, to start investing your energy in places that will create immediate change in your marriage and gain clarity about the next steps in your life. And this call, my friend, is totally free. And I want to be clear here because this offer is not for everyone. This offer is for women who are radically accountable. And that means you must be willing to be more committed to the solution than to the problem. You must be in a relationship with a good guy or a good gal, not married to someone who's abusive or they've done something that's unforgivable, because if you're holding on to so much pain and anguish, and if you feel like you should just really leave, we don't want to try to convince you to stay. You must be ready to take real action, knowing that the path may not be easy, but it is simple. So my team is here. We are here to help support you, but we cannot push you up the hill. You have to do the heavy lifting. If this is you, yay, so happy, welcome. I would love it if you would book a session right now. I will be so stoked to meet you and to have some time with you on the phone because you, my friend, have found your tribe. Some people ask, why are we doing this? So we're doing this because I feel personally very committed to radically changing the conversation about marriage commitment in this culture, in our world, and how we talk about it and how we come to understand it. I'm so delighted to give back and to offer something to our guests here. So I appreciate your time and energy today and being present through this entire webinar. And I absolutely believe in giving back when I can and where I can. I also know that you might want our help and support. And if you do, we can see if we're a good fit, if you're a good fit for our program, and if we're a good match. So here's what you do. I'd like you to go to www.jennyglick.com/apply. And this is really important, friends. Space is very limited. So I will be on the call with you, and there's only one of me. And so Please, when you book that time slot, find a time that works for you in the next couple of days. But if you're interested, do it now. Okay? Um, I am delighted that you're here. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to work with you. I know your time is valuable, and I know that we will absolutely be able to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. So come over, book a time, and I will look forward to speaking with you soon.